أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So we're gonna have Surah Al-Muzzammil. As I explained in the first part, we cannot cover the whole chapter today. We're gonna have only verses 1 to 14. I want to claim that Surah Al-Muzzammil has three paragraphs. And what do I mean by paragraph, and how did I divided it into three paragraphs? You will be more familiar with this during future classes when I explain the fundamentals of Tadabbur. I'm going to just provide a brief explanation about it now. Uh, Actually, paragraph in Tadabbur or paragraph of the Quran is very similar to the paragraph in our textbook. In other books, in any of like articles, you can see that some verses, some actually sentences are very well connected to each other, and they form like a paragraph because they have a consistent literature and they are talking about one concept. So those sentences are very well connected to each other, and they can be considered as one paragraph because of that consistency in the literature and the consistency in the context. So because of that, we assume it as one paragraph. Especially those people who do the editing the book, they are very familiar with this. They are like, okay, it seems that this sentence does not belong to this paragraph. It should be on the top paragraph, and I have to add it to the other one, not this one, and stuff like this. This is very similar to what we do in Tadabbur. We read those verses in one chapter, one by one, and we find out those connection between the verses, and then we say, okay, it seems that verses 1 to 14 are very well connected to each other. They're all talking about one concept, and they have a unique literature, and it seems that they are in one paragraph. And then when I read the next verse, like the verses, like verse 15 in this chapter, I'm like, okay, it seems that this verse is slightly different from the verses before, and it seems that the actually concept is also slightly different. So I can assume this one at the beginning of a new paragraph. Why do we do these things? Because we want to have a better understanding of those concepts. When we divided them into different paragraphs, we can understand the concept in one paragraph, then the concept of the other paragraph, then the other one. Then we can find out the connection between those paragraphs together, very similar to the other books. If there is no paragraph in them, it will be very difficult for us to read them. I will talk about paragraphs and finding those paragraphs more and more in our future classes. For now, I just want to say that this chapter has three paragraphs, and I will explain it when we are reading these verses. I will show you how those verses are connected to each other. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the entirely beneficent, the ever merciful. Ya ayyuhal muzammil, O you, the enwrapped in the heavy garment. This verse is talking to the Prophet. God is calling him as the enwrapped. And this al-muzammil, which means someone who covered himself, who enwrapped himself, enveloped himself in a heavy garment, something like a heavy blanket. And God is calling him and describing him with this word because he wanted to show us the situation that the prophet was in it. This verse is not actually admiring the prophet or blaming him, none of it. It's not admiring, it's not blaming, it's just describing him as someone who enwrapped himself in a heavy garment or in a heavy blanket. It's actually kind of a situation that when people are sad or tired or disappointed from the others or from the situation that he is in it, people usually do this. and they want to have kind of a relaxation, to be calm and to be relaxed, to rest for a while and to be separated from all of those difficulties which is around him. So being enwrapped for the Prophet and as God calling him as someone who is as someone who enwrapped him in something, it's not for admiring him and it's not for blaming him. It's actually describing his situation because he wanted to tell us how difficulties he went through, and he was sad, he was disappointed, he wanted to have some relaxation for a while and stuff like this. So Prophet was trying to invite people. He was trying to invite them to Islam, to Qur'an. He was trying to talk to them and stuff like that. But they were continuously rejecting him, not only rejecting him, but attacking him. Um, Calling him as a crazy guy, calling him as a magician, and stuff like this. They had a really bad attitude toward him. They were very disrespectful to him. And because of all of those things, he was very sad and he was tired. And he was like, I am inviting them continuously and I'm trying to be kind with them, but now they are acting like this. So he wanted to have some relaxation. He went to a actually quiet place and he enwrapped himself in a heavy garment or in a heavy blanket to have some relaxation. In this situation, God observed him and saw him that he is sad, and God started talking to him, and he is trying to comfort him. Let's see how God is actually talking to the prophet, was talking to the prophet, and what he's gonna tell to him. O you, the enwrapped, قم الليل إلا قليلا. Stand up at the night, except a little. So in this position, we were waiting to hear something like, okay, go have some relaxation, sleep more, and stuff like this. You know, he was tired, he was disappointed, and he needed to have some relaxation. In this situation, we were actually waiting to hear something like this from God, like, go have some rest or go for a vacation and stuff like this. But now God is telling him that stand up at the night, except a little. You are not allowed to sleep. And this is actually an order from God. This is a brief order from God. And he briefly told him that you have to stand up at the night, except a little. Based on many interpretation, this verse and this chapter was an order from God to tell the prophet that you have to do the nightly pray or tahajjud, which is famous among Muslims as tahajjud or nightly pray. And based on this chapter, we believe that this nightly pray was something necessary for the prophet. It was a must for the prophet, not for all of us, not for us. We only do the morning pray, but nightly pray was a must for the prophet after this chapter. We will go through it. This is actually a brief command from the Lord. He told his prophet that you have to stand up at the night. You are tired, you are disappointed, you are not allowed to sit somewhere and enwrap yourself in a heavy garment and have some relaxation. No, stand up at the night, except a little. This brief command needs some explanation. The Prophet has more question. What do you mean by illa qalila, except a little? Then God started to explaining what does he mean by illa qalila. He has to explain how much the Prophet has to stand up at the night. نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا, half of it or reduce from it a little. It means that half of the night you have to stand up, or a little less than half. For example, if there is 8 hours between sunset and dawn, you have to wake up 4 hours of it and do the pray or recite the Quran. We will see it at the rest of this chapter. Or you are allowed to reduce it a little, which means just a little less than 4 hours, you have to stand up. أو زد عليها ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, or add to it and recite the Quran in a distinct tone. Or you can add to that 4 hours, that, for example, have 4 hours, like more than half of it, you can add to half of it and have more of the night. And you have to stand up during that time and doing what? رتل القرآن ترتيلا, and recite the Quran in a distinct tone. Tartil, which I translated into a distinct tone, is a specific way of reading a text, and the person who is doing tartil has a good knowledge about that text. He understands what he is reading or reciting. He knows how to increase or decrease the voice, how to stop, and stuff like this. He has a good understanding about that text. For example, if you give a text, a difficult text to a kids who is elementary in reading, it's difficult for that kid to read it, and you cannot even understand what that kid is reading because he doesn't know how to increase or decrease the voice and have a measured tone. Actually, God is telling the prophet that during the night, when you stand up, you have to recite the Quran in a distinct tone. Actually, reciting Quran also should be during the pray for the prophet in this context. And actually, the best media for reciting Quran is during the pray. For example, when you read Surah Al-Fatiha, then after that you have to pick one chapter. That chapter can be different chapters of Quran, except those chapters which has a Sajdatul Wajib. Anyway, this verse shows us that the prophet should recite the Quran in a specific tone, in a specific way, in a distinct tone, to show that rhythm in a correct way, and doing it during the prayer, because the best media for reciting Quran is during the prayer. So these two verses together were actually an explanation for a little, because at the second verse, God told the prophet, stand up at the night except a little. What is that a little? Then he explained it at the third and fourth verse. Also, he added another command, Rattil al-Quran, recite the Quran in a distinct tone. And why should the prophet recite the Quran during the night? Why did God command him to do so? This is a question. And God clarified this part at the next verse. إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. Indeed, we will send down upon you a weighty word, because we are gonna reveal to you new verses, new chapters, and you need to do more exercise. You have to be ready for it. Verses of Quran and chapters of Quran are really heavy. They are weighty words, and it was difficult for the prophet to receive those words and the revelation. And he had a really difficult situation when he was receiving those words. And God is telling him that we are going to send more. So you have to be prepared for it. It's very similar to how athletes do the exercises. For example, weightlifter, they do lifting the weight, and they usually start with light weights. And then during the time, if they want to go for different matches, and if they want to go if they want to be stronger and stronger, they have to exercise more and more with heavier weight. Very similar to that, God is telling the prophet that you have to exercise by reading and reciting the Quran, and you need to be stronger and stronger by reading and reviewing them, because we are going to send you similar words which are weighty. So if you want to be prepared for those weighty words and for those heavy words, which we are gonna reveal to you, you have to practice those words that you have already. Practice with them, recite them, repeat them. In this way, you will be stronger and stronger, and then we will send down to you more and more chapters and verses. The other thing that we need to know about the second verse, and probably the prophet also needed to know, was the reason that that why did God choose the night time? At the second verse, God told him, stand up at the night. Why nighttime? And why didn't he choose the daytime? God explained it at the sixth verse, and he said, "إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا." Indeed, the created impression. Sorry, is it here? Yeah. And indeed, the created impression at the night is the firmest way to treat and the best for receiving speech. This verse is actually explaining that during the night time, when you stand up to do pray or recite Qur'an, something will be created in you and will grow in you. And it's actually a spiritual experience that is much better than the daytime. During the night time, that creator impression inside of you, that spiritual experience is much better, and it's the firmest way to treat. What does it mean, the firmest way to treat? I want to bring an example to make it clear. For example, you want to build a street and you want to have some asphalt there. If that street is a small street, it's not that wide and it's only for normal and regular car, you do not put such a strong and thick asphalt. It'll be something normal. Some normal asphalt would be enough for that street. But if it's a wider street and it's gonna be really heavy cars on it and stuff like this, you need a stronger asphalt, you need a thicker asphalt for that street. If you want to build airport runway, and there's gonna be airplane on that asphalt, of course you need a stronger asphalt, thicker asphalt, and asphalt, stuff like this. Very similar to that, if the prophet is going to receive some heavy and weighty words from God, he needs to have some strong foundation inside of him. He needs to have some spiritual actually experience, which if he do this kind of stuff like reading and reciting Quran during the night, he can have a better and a stronger foundation inside of him to receive those message. And then it says وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا, and the best for receiving speech. Some verses says that this is the best way for talking to God. Actually, based on the context and based on what we have in these verses are talking about receiving the message from God. These verses are trying to help prophet and prepare him to receive the message of God in an easier and in a better way. So, أقوم قيل plus قيل is actually passive, and it means this is the best for receiving speech. When someone is talking to do, when God is talking to do and sending you some verses, this is much better for you. If you do some practices during the night, you will be ready, you will be prepared to receive those messages. One important point, this verse does not mean that the verses were sent down during the night only. No, the verses were sent down during the night, during the day, anytime. This verse is just saying that if you do the practice during the night, you'll be more prepared and you can have a stronger foundation and you can have a better understanding of those verses and receiving them in an easier way. And then another reason, إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا. Another reason that God chose the night time for the prophet to do his practice and his pray and his recitation is because of the uh, busy time during the daytime. Uh, and verse 7 said that indeed for you at the daytime there are prolonged activities or duties. During the daytime you are very busy. There are many people coming to you asking many questions, and you have the other things that you should do. You cannot focus on this kind of spiritual exercises. You cannot focus on the recitation and doing some specific praise and stuff like this. Daytime is full of many activities and duties and responsibilities. So that's why I choose nighttime. So these two verses, 6 and 7, are explaining the reason that God chose the nighttime. Having a quick review on these verses, the first verse actually was talking to the prophet and describing him as someone who is enwrapped. And then God told him that you have to stand up at the night except a little. This was a brief sentence. And then God explained it with more details at the rest of this chapter. First, he explained what does he mean by except a little. And then he explained why did he told the prophet to recite the Quran, because he's gonna send down heavy words. And then he explained why did he choose the night time. Those seven verses were very well connected to each other, which I put them here again. And then 8th verse, which says, وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. This is another order to the prophet. As I put them in another slide, it doesn't mean that they are in another paragraph. I didn't have enough space on the other slide, so I put them here. But as you saw, at the first verse, God started talking to the prophet, then told him that you have to stand up, then told him that you have to recite the Quran. Then at the 8th verse, he's saying, وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. And remember the name of your Lord and devote yourself to him with complete devotion. It's another order, as I said. It's telling the prophet that you have to remember the name of your Lord. It's going to give you many energy, and it's going to help you in all of those difficulties that you have, and devote yourself to him with complete devotion, which means just pay attention to him. Don't care about the other people. Don't care what they are talking about you. If they are bothering you, if they are making fun of you, if they are calling you as a crazy man or as a magician and stuff like this, don't care about them. Tabattal means someone who is cut off from the others and only paying attention to God. He is only with God and does not and do not care about the other. So God is telling him that do not care about them. And why? Because he is رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا. You have to remember the name of your Lord and you have to devote yourself to him, because he is the Lord of the East and the West. If they are bothering you and if you think that you cannot stand against them, don't worry. Just go to the Lord, because he is the Lord of the East and West. It means he is the Lord of universe. It means he is the manager of the universe, and he has that power to do everything, and no one can stand against him, and this kind of stuff. So if you are worried, if they are bothering you, just remember the name of your Lord. He is the Lord of the East and West. There is no deity except him. He is the only Lord. La ilaha illahu. There is no Lord except him. There is no God except him. There is no deity except him. فَاتَّخَذْهُ وَكِيلًا. So take him as guardian or defender or lawyer Vakil is someone who can defend you, is someone who can be your guardian or like your lawyer or your defender. When we are not able to do something, when we do not have enough power or we do not have enough knowledge to defend ourselves and stuff like this, we ask someone to do it for us. For example, I can ask a lawyer to do something for me because I don't have enough knowledge about laws and stuff like this. In this situation, we can say that I took someone as a, sorry, I think one of you is working with the slide. Would you please do not do it because it's making some, thank you. Um, So yeah, I was talking about فَاتَّخَذْهُ وَكِيلًا. If I do not have enough power or do not have enough knowledge to do my own things, I can ask someone to do it for me. Now God is telling the prophet that in this kind of a difficult situation, you shouldn't go sit somewhere and enwrap yourself in a heavy garment. Remember the name of your Lord. Remember that He is the Lord of the East and West, and ask Him to help you. He can be your guardian, he can be your defender, and فَاتَّخَذْهُ وَكِيلًا. Ask him to help you. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. So, but God, what should I do about them? They keep talking and they keep bothering me and making fun of me. So God is telling the prophet that, and be patient over what they say and avoid them with gracious avoidance. You have to be patient about what they are talking about you, if they are making joke, if they are denying you, if they saying that Quran is a joke and stuff like this. Just be patient and avoid them, but in a good manner. Don't be bad with them. Don't have a bad attitude with them. Just avoid them with gracious avoidance. وَذَرْنِي وَالْمُكَذِّبِينَ أُولِي النَّعْمَةِ وَمَهِّلْهُمْ قَلِيلًا. And leave me to deal with the deniers who have wealth and respite them a little. So God told the prophet, but be patient about them and leave me to deal with them. Just you can go and work on your invitation, invite people who are interested in Quran, who are interested in Islam, talk with them. And these kind of people who are denying you, don't worry about them. Be patient with them, be kind with them, and just leave them to me. I'm going to deal with them, and they are actually wealthy people, and just give them a little time. وَمَهِّلْهُمْ قَلِيلًا means respite them a little, even if they are gonna have a long life like 100 years, 200 years, but they are gonna die one day. So this is still a short time. So give them this short time, give them this short time. They can do whatever that they like, be patient about them, and let me deal with them. Now we have a question. How are you going to deal with them, my Lord? Are you going to send another prophet to them? Are you going to send a new book to them? How are you going to deal with them? At the next verse, God is going to explain that إِنَّ لَدَيْنَا أَنْكَالًا وَجَحِيمًا. Indeed, with us, for them are shackles and burning fire. So that is how God is gonna deal with them. God is gonna punish them, and there are something on the other side for this kind of a people. Shackles are fetters, two fetters which are connected to each other with a chain, and usually for people who are arrested or they are in the prison, they have shackles on them. And God is telling the prophet that don't worry about them, just leave them. I have something for them on the other side. They can have a short time here in this world, even if it's apparently for them a long life, 100 years, 200 years, doesn't matter. They will die one day, and I have something for them on the other side. And وَطَعَامًا ذَا غُصَّةٍ وَعَذَابًا أَلِيمًا, and food that chucks and a painful punishment. So these are actually some punishment that God provided for them on the other side. These two verses is the way that God is gonna deal with this kind of a denier. And when it's gonna happen, Next verse is gonna explain it for us. يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا. And the day the earth and the mountains will convulse, and the mountains will become a heap of sand like dunes pouring down. So it's kind of a description about the day of judgment, actually before the day of judgment, on that day when the earth and sky and everything is going to change to be another day, another sky, another earth, to be prepared for the day of judgment. On that day, even mountains, which are a symbol of strong objects in this world, even the mountains will become dunes. They will be like a heap of sand. Everything is going to be destroyed. So these tiny people who are nothing compared to mountains, of course, they will be also punished in a really uh, huge punishment. So these verses were very well related to each other, and I believe that now you can understand the connection between all of them. There are many orders to the Prophet. God issued many of these orders. First one, stand up at the night and recite the Qur'an. Remember the name of your Lord and devote yourself to Him. And then take Him as a lawyer, as a guardian, as a defender. Wasper, which means be patient about those people who are denying you and bothering you, and avoid them, and then leave me to deal with them, and then give them a time, respite them a time, a little time, and all of these orders, which are very well related to each other. And all of these verses are trying to prepare the prophet for his prophecy, for this difficult path. And then these three verses are describing the punishment that is provided by God for those deniers on the other side. I believe that the connection of these 14 verses are very clear now. And that's why I describe them as one paragraph. It started with Ya ayyuhal Muzzammil, calling the prophet, and then issuing some orders, and then describing the situation that deniers are going to have on the other side. These are very well connected, and we can assume them as one paragraph. And then when we go to the 15th verse, it says, إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ رَسُولًا شَاهِدًا إِلَيْكُمْ كَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ رَسُولًا. Indeed, we have sent to you, it's talking to people, come, it's talking to all people, a messenger, which means the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a witness over you, just as we sent to Pharaoh a messenger. So obviously, this verse is different from the concept that we had before. In the verses 1 to 14, God was talking to the prophet directly. It wasn't talking with the people or stuff like that. It was only with the prophet. Now this one is talking to the people, and it's about another things. It's not those orders to the prophet. So for that reason, I can claim verse 15 is the beginning of the second paragraph, which we will have it next week. As a quick review over what we had today, it started with Ya ayyuhal Muzzammil, calling the prophet as the enwrapped, and then it told the prophet that you have to stand up at the night, except a little. Then it explained a little. What does it mean by a little? And then another order that you have to recite the Quran, as we are gonna send you more verses. You have to be ready for that. Then it explained why did I choose night time, and then it explained other commands. Yeah. And then he issued other commands. Remember the name of the Lord, and uh, devote yourself to him, and then take him as a defender, and then be patient, and avoid the other people. Don't care about what they are talking behind you, and leave me to deal with them. And then a punishment that is provided for those people on the other side. This was actually our first paragraph. I only did the translation of it. Next week, we will go to the rest of the chapter. Then next week, which means at the third week, I will explain the main point of each of these paragraphs. Then I will explain the connection between these paragraphs. And then we will talk about the reason that God sent down these verses, which is now very obvious for you. You can easily understand what was the reason that God sent down these verses. The prophet was worried, he was sad, he was disappointed, he needed some support from the God, he needed him to show him how should he deal with those deniers and how should he be prepared for the rest of his prophecy. So we will talk about these things later. Today, and I'm sorry, we are almost done. Yeah, we had almost 1 hour. Sorry for long explanations. I tried only to translate these verses. We will go to the Tadabbur of it and for the rest of it next week. And then after that, I will explain the connection of these paragraphs to understand the main goal of this chapter. We believe that each chapter of Quran has a main goal, although it might have different paragraphs and talking about different stories, but those stories and those paragraphs are all connected to each other, and all of them trying to reach us to a specific point, to a goal, which is actually the main goal of that chapter. I invite you to listen to the recitation. I'm going to stop the recording. We can listen to the recitation. Then after that, if